All right guys, today I'm going to show you how to run your tubing through the hull of your kayak. So a couple things you'll need. You need a torch. This one's a little overkill. I normally use a small torch, but that one is out of butane, so this one will do. Another thing that'll work is a lighter. You don't need a real high heat source, just something with a small flame to be able to heat that tubing up and mushroom it. Pair of vice grips. And then I've got, this wire is about 1/8 of an inch thick, and I have two pieces of it. I have a long piece here that'll go all the way through the kayak. That's the one I use to pull the tubing through the hull, and then this short piece is the one that I use to mushroom the ends of the tubing. And I'll get into that here in a second and what they are. Like I said, it's like 1/8 of an inch piece of wire, just under 1/8 of an inch. And then this piece of metal here just has an 1/8 inch hole in it. That way, it helps to mushroom the tubing once you are all set up and ready to go. Like I said, I'll go over that in a second and how it actually works. So this specific kayak is a Hobie Pro Angler 14 360. And for the tubing in this kayak, we run it into the hull right here on each side. You can see right there. So we'll run the tubing through there, and then we bring it out the back on either side of the mount, which is right here and right here. So once you have your holes drilled, you take your long piece of wire and feed it down in here into the front hole. Now, the Hobie Pro Angler has some foam inside of here to help stiffen up the walls of the kayak, so when it gets hot in the summertime and this plastic expands and contracts, it doesn't get spongy or anything. So sometimes you got to try and work through that foam or around that foam, and then push that cable on through. Then you come up here and check, make sure that it's in here where it needs to be. So when I do the Hobies are a little different than some of the other kayaks. Some of them are pretty straightforward, like the P127. You just push it back, and then you can get the wire straight through the back hole. With the Hobies, they're a little more complicated. So what I do with the Hobie kayaks is I actually stop the wire right in here so I can pull it out of the access hole here. And then I'll put the tubing in the back of the kayak, and I'll run it up in so I can reach it. And then I grab it, pull it through, just get enough so you can get it started on the end of the wire. So you push it up on the wire, and you want a good snug fit on your wire. That way when you pull it through the kayak, it doesn't pull off of the wire itself. So I'm gonna take and push in some slack from the back end, and then I'll pull on the wire to get this to pull all the way through. So it might take a couple tries, so I'll pull what I have until I feel it stop. And then I'll push some more tubing in. When you get to the end, you'll feel it stop, and then you kind of have to wiggle it a little bit to get it out the hole. We drill a 3/16 hole in the hull of the kayak because a 3/16 hole gives you a nice snug fit with your tubing, so when you mushroom it, it comes right out and it makes a good solid seal. All right, so once you get the tubing pulled through, you go ahead and pull your wire out. And then you take your short wire and you put it into the tubing, and then take your torch and you heat up the end of the tubing. You don't need to heat it too much. Just enough to make it hot enough to mushroom the end of that tubing. And you do it 2 or 3 times just to get it warm enough so that it mushrooms well, but don't heat it up too much because it'll really deform the tubing. And then once you get it mushroomed pretty well, then you can take and heat it up one last time. And then you push the tubing down in, and then you can mushroom it around the hole so that it makes a nice shape around the end of the tubing. Leave your wire in there, that way the hole doesn't collapse, and then let that cool. Once it cools, it'll remain the same shape, and it has a nice mushroomed head on it. That way it doesn't pull back into the hull when we stretch this tubing when we do the back. So once you get the front done, you pull the tubing tight to the back, take the slack out of it, and then let it relax. You take a knife and cut it so you leave yourself about 2 inches. And then take your short piece of wire and you run your short piece of wire in there. And you want to go in a good ways, because when you pull this out, you need to be able to put your vice grips on here, and it needs to clamp on the wire inside the tubing. You don't want to clamp the tubing without the wire inside of it because it'll smash it. So once you get the wire shoved in there, pull this out. Pull it too hard. So pull it out to stretch the tubing, and then clamp it with a vice grip so it doesn't go back in. And then I take my knife and I cut the tubing to leave myself just enough to mushroom the end of it. Then you slice it down the side to where you cut it, and then you can pull this off, and then the rest of the piece that was left comes right off. So once you get to this point, all you got to do is heat it. Try not to heat the back of the kayak. The vice grips kind of protect that. That's where a smaller torch or a lighter comes in handy. This big torch is a little too big, but it's what I've got. So heat it the same way. A little bit, and then smash it. A little bit. Smash it again. I'm gonna go one more time. So that gives you a nice flat mushroomed end. And then we'll let that cool for a second. Once it cools down, we take the vice grips off and it'll pull itself back in. And then you're finished. You're ready to slide your spectra cord through. So there's no special tools really needed, just kind of some stuff that I found that works with the wire and the flat piece of metal with a hole in it. This is the easiest way I've found, and we've done it about 10 different ways. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this off and then push in a little bit with the wire and then let that cool down the rest of the way, and then you're good to go. The cord will slide right through there if you're using the spectra cord that we sell. It's just stiff enough that it pushes through, but not too stiff that you can't tie a knot in the end of it and then reuse it. So hope this helps you guys when you're doing your own installs. But yeah, we'll see you on the next one.